Recording in progress.
Just going to give it another minute or two. We're waiting for one more member. Sarah Fox, are you here? All right, we've got our final member, so I will call us to order at 7:03. First up is commendations. Any commendations?
Sarah?
Yep.
Could we actually just read Richard's letter here? Because I think that comment, that to me gave me chills.
Yes, John, would you like to do that? Yes.
So this is to the leadership team from Richard Kelleher, our food service director. We're all aware of the emergency situation that occurred at Brown. A good number of folks worked outside of their areas of responsibility to make sure the students were in the best possible situation. I wanted to acknowledge and thank members of my staff, Enid Wood and Diane Doing. They had a number of little hungries who showed up at their doorstep. They basically set up a special lunch service after they had closed and cleaned their kitchen. They had one foot out the door, but stopped and made this happen. At the Brown School, I wanted to thank the entire custodial staff, Gilberto Rodriguez, Jim Richards, and Pano Gakis, for their extra efforts under extreme circumstances. My staff was allowed back into the building only to make sure equipment was turned off and to retrieve their personal belongings. This meant they could not put anything away, wash, clean, or sanitize equipment or surfaces. When Tracy DePaula, cook manager, arrived this morning, she was astonished. Everything had been put away, wiped down, pans rinsed and soaked, remaining food properly disposed of. The custodian's extra effort on top of a late start caused by an emergency was very much appreciated. It allowed my staff to focus on feeding the children instead of cleaning up from the day before. Just wanted folks to know that this kind of teamwork and dedication is valued, noticed, and appreciated. Richard Kelleher, Director of Food Services.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Well, it's been a while since our last meeting, and the last meeting was actually canceled because our football team was going to the Super Bowl. So whereas a lot of congratulations have been given to them, I will go on record for the school committee and congratulate them one more time. It was a fantastic game. My fourth grader still talks about it at points. It was a lot of fun, and those kids just did such an amazing job. It was really impressive, and actually really good football. So, congratulations to all of them. I hope that they're still riding high on that win. And it was really exciting to see after such a long 2 years that so much joy and just the hard work and everything and just how much they deserved that win and just the fun normalcy of all of it. So congratulations again to them. Anybody else? All right. I wanted to say one more thank you since this is our last meeting of 2021. I just want to again thank our staff, our teachers, our custodians, everyone, all of our administrators, everyone working really, really hard. I know how hard this year has been, especially myself being in a school. Like it's daunting work day after day, and so I wanted to take a moment to just thank you all again, and thank you for keeping our kids in school this year and helping them learn and taking care of their social emotional growth, dealing with behaviors that are out of whack from a lack of socialization over the last couple of years, and none of this is easy. So I'm very grateful. All right. With that, we will welcome our student representative, Yasin Colon.
Thank you, Sarah. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yep, cool. Okay. So it's been a bit. On November 20th, the seniors had a fall ball, and that was one of their first events since COVID, and that went very well, I heard. Sing Free Die Hard, the a cappella concert, was on November 23rd. The Thanksgiving Day food drive helped feed 100 families. So that was a great cause, supported a lot of families. We also collected toys from the Thanksgiving game Toy Blitz. The National Art Honor Society had their inductions November 30th. PSAT scores released to sophomores and juniors December 6th. Jefferson Forum, which is the high school's community service club, held another toy drive through December 19th, and they collected toys for 142 families. Project 351 ran their annual food drive with the Marblehead Food Pantry through December 10th. The National French Honor Society is holding a gift wrapping fundraiser through December 22nd, and they will donate the proceeds to the Haiti Development Institute. The Animal Wellness Club is collecting canned pet food, and the MHS Winter Concert is this Monday, December 20th. And we're going to have, I believe, the band, chorus, and orchestra and a cappella groups as well performing. For sports, a while ago, Marblehead won Powder Puff, and they raised $10,000 for the Women's Lunch Place, which is a homeless shelter in Boston. So congrats to the Powder Puff team, and it's a good amount of money for a good cause. The boys won the Thanksgiving football game and obviously the state championship at Gillette Stadium. Another congratulations to them. Winter sports have also just begun. Girls and boys basketball won Tuesday. The freshman class is planning a movie night fundraiser with Dandy Donuts and the Warwick Group. They're also going to be doing some gingerbread house building and some other fundraisers in the future. The sophomore class raised $500 from their fundraiser, and they are selling candy cane grams as well. That's a fun little thing. The juniors are working out details with prom and finishing class clothes distribution, and the seniors were looking at the beautiful Fenway prom space they will have in the spring. That's all I have.
It's a great update. Thank you. A few of those things I had forgotten about as well. Particularly, I know I wanted to give a commendation to the staff that had worked on the senior ball. I know there was a few people who really went the extra mile to make that happen and to make it really fun for the seniors. And from every piece of feedback that I've gotten, it was a really good time for the kids. So
yeah, it looked really, really incredible.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Yasin, and enjoy your winter vacation, and we will see you back here in the new year.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. All right, that brings us to public comment. If anybody wants to use the raise hand function, please go ahead and do so. I will ask that you keep your comments to within 3 minutes and that you state your name and address for the record. Jess Benedetto.
Hi, good evening. I'd like to bring up in public comment that I have been asking the school committee and the district for 1.5 years now to increase busing options for our families. Here we are again in the budget season, and we're in a position where I haven't seen anyone advocate for any budget line item to increase busing within our district. We're still in a global pandemic, and access to in-person learning, as we know, is at a premium. At the recent budget subcommittee meeting, Michelle Cresta stated we gave back $99,705 returned back to the town of money we didn't use. And part of that was the bus driver that we didn't use because we couldn't fill the position. And that's because we're not paying enough to attract a bus driver. So I think we need to look at that and make some changes for the upcoming busing season. As the school committee, you represent the parents. You guys were elected in the district. And I think that we need to listen to the parents who say that we pay taxes in this town. We are working families. And if we're living more than 2 miles from our school, these kids deserve a safe, reliable option for transportation to the school, even if they are beyond 6th grade. And I'd like to see that become part of the budget conversation coming up.
Thank you, Jess.
Can I just clarify on that though?
Sure.
Because I do believe we've got bus drivers in the budget request that we saw this weekend, right? Just to clarify. So we are, yes? Okay, thank you.
All right, there are no more hands raised, so I will move us along to our consent action and agenda items. Michelle, I think, is here and gonna help us out with a few of these. We have an acceptance of donation and approval to declare a couple of things surplus. So the first one is a wonderful donation for a new wrestling mat from Parker Grissom, a friend of the wrestling program. So I will ask for a motion to accept this donation of $7,664.48 to purchase a new wrestling mat for Marblehead High School.
So moved.
Sarah moved.
Second.
Emily second. Any questions? All right. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
Emily Barron?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That passes 5-0, and thank you, Mr. Grissom. All right. The next item up is to declare surplus some computer tables at the high school. It looks like Mr. Bauer is requesting to make 40 computer tables that are not being used and are taking up room in storage and declare them surplus. Leadership asking if there was a need for these tables at other schools, and there was none. So can I have a motion to declare the Marblehead High School computer tables surplus?
So moved.
Sarah moved.
I'll second.
Megan second. Any questions?
So not to ask a very repetitive question, but we'll try to donate these first, right? Okay.
That's usually the way we operate. Yep. All right. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris. Can you unmute David?
Yes.
Megan Taylor.
Yes.
Emily Barron.
Yes.
And Sarah Fox.
Yes. When I first read this memo, I read that Dan wanted to decompose because I read it quickly, and I was like, what is going on over there?
All right, our final item to declare as surplus is from Todd Bloodgood, and he is asking permission to decommission and dispose of the school district's 1999 GMC Savannah van It's beyond repair and unable to obtain a state inspection and is of no value. So can I get a motion to declare the 1999 GMC Savannah van as surplus?
So moved.
Sarah?
Second.
Megan, second. Any questions on that?
Is this something that like Essex Tech or someone could like use as a teaching tool?
We could make a donation to
I don't want to give them our garbage, but if they can use it for students to work with, then it might be helpful.
Absolutely. We can definitely have Todd reach out. All right, Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
And Emily Barron?
Yes.
All right. That passes 5-0. Thank you, everyone. And that moves us on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Buckey, I will let you take it away.
This is perhaps one of the more enjoyable superintendent's reports because we have a student that is going to present to the committee his Eagle Scout project, and I see his camera has come on. Is Tyler have screen share capacity? If not,
yes, I just made him a co-host, so he will be able to share his screen.
Tyler, the meeting is yours.
Don't kick any of us out, though, okay?
Right.
Welcome, Tyler.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Arp. I'm a Life Scout with Troop 11 in town. And tonight I'm here to present my Eagle Scout project. And I just want to say thank you for having me here. So my Eagle project will be improving the outdoor space at MHS. And for anyone who doesn't know, the outdoor classroom space is this area in between A and B wing, which is kind of near the entrance. And you can take a staircase up here to get to the outdoor classroom area. So within improvements to the outdoor classroom, my project will kind of have 3 elements. So one will be adding a greenhouse, replacing the existing raised beds, and then doing some site conservation to kind of deal with invasive species and overgrown plants that are kind of taking over the area. So I really wanted to do this for my project. Since a young age, I've always liked school and I've always liked gardening. So I thought this would be a nice way to kind of tie those two together through my Eagle project. And this can also relate to the curriculum a lot. So that's why I think it's kind of a nice project. Greenhouses have a lot of area in STEM that can be explored. So the science curriculum, National Green School Society, which is a club at the high school, kind of an environmental club, could use it. The cooking classes could grow food to be used in the classroom. In the Bright program, which currently uses the raised beds, we'll be able to use the greenhouse and new raised beds. So I looked into several different greenhouses, and I will work with Miss Cresta to kind of continue, I guess, getting more pricing. But this is kind of the best option. It's about $65 a square foot compared to others are more $75 a square foot of a glass greenhouse. So this is essentially a quote from a retailer. So there are all these options that you can have for the greenhouse. One thing to note is installation. It's about $18,000, which is obviously very expensive. It's a little silly to me that it's that much, but you can do it by yourself. So instead of spending almost $18,000 on installation, I will work with kind of a general contractor who's kind of local to get that done. And yeah. And then this is a similar image that the retailer sent me. Now it's essentially going to be this glass and aluminum frame. And then there will be a cement foundation. However, there won't be kind of a paver on the side. there won't be this stonework on the foundation, and there will be double doors on this kind of end rather than the side. So this is kind of what is needed out of the options provided by the retailer. Obviously the base cost for about 22 grand. And then the glass, having it thicker is really key, especially in an area where we are, where it's colder. Having thicker glass allows for heat to kind of go in. So then you don't need to spend as much money on heating, and you're more successful growing things. And then fans to get airflow, tables, another door, so for better accessibility. Deliveries about 3,500, and then just Massachusetts professional drawings. And so that comes out to about $42,000 for the greenhouse. So now I'm going to talk about the raised beds, which is the second component of my project. So there will be 4 raised beds, which are kind of represented by these gray boxes. And they will be replacing these kind of 2 long, older raised beds that have kind of fallen apart over the past 10, 11 years. And this yellow box would be kind of where the greenhouse is. So it would kind of be tiered, if that makes sense. So there's a 32-inch knee wall on the greenhouse. Then it drops 8 feet, not 8 feet, I'm sorry, 8 inches from the knee wall to the height of this raised bed. And then it drops another 8 inches to this set of raised beds. So it's kind of a nice tiered look from the outside. And they'd all be 8 feet long by 4 feet wide, with kind of a 4-foot pathway in between everything. So for wood, I'm kind of looking at 2 different options. One of them is cedar. It's rot resistant, and it's a hardwood, so it's not going to decay very easily, and it is less likely to get damaged if, say, a branch falls on it. So the cost of cedar fluctuates, obviously. So I've been looking at it over the past 6 months or so, and it's ranged from about $39 to $43 per board. And if I need 60 boards, that puts the total around $2,100 to $2,500 for the boards. Now, another option for wood, which is kind of an interesting option, would be to actually go for some wood such as black locust, which isn't sold commercially, but it's a hardwood, it's rot resistant. And depending on if, say, some local tree companies are taking down black locust that they're just going to use for scrap, I may be able to get some donated, which would significantly save on the cost. And then screws, obviously. So this would put the raised beds to about $2,300 to $2,700. So now I'm going to talk about the overgrown plants. So there's black locust. Now, this is too small to be used for raised beds. But you don't want it in a school. It has thorns. It spreads extremely fast. And if it is let run wild, I guess it kind of takes over, which means you can't really use the space as much as you would like to. So I would be taking out black locust. There's also some Japanese knotweed, which is this plant right here. And it is an invasive, and it's kind of started growing into this pathway. It has been cut back since, but it is an invasive. So I'll be working kind of with my troop and other groups such as the Conservancy to kind of replace the invasives with native species. There's some bittersweet in this tree that I'll be taking out. And then there's some branches kind of surrounding where the greenhouse will be that I'll cut back. So the total cost for everything, there's the greenhouse. The greenhouse needs a foundation, so that's about $20,000. The raised beds are about $2,300 to $2,700, dependent on cedar wood or black locust wood, and kind of where that falls when I'm ready to purchase the wood. And then other costs, that would be things such as what's going in the greenhouse, materials needed for the greenhouse, the heating system. So kind of miscellaneous stuff that doesn't fall into these other 3 categories. So that puts the total cost to around $75,000. So fundraising. Eagle projects, we kind of have to fundraise. So the goal would be, someone is asking to enter the witness.
Got it.
Okay. So I will work with the school to collect the funds into a donation account. I would like this to be a community project in a way, because I think it does appeal to everyone. And I think everyone could kind of use it almost, I guess. For example, if there are groups, I haven't reached out, but Sustainable Marblehead, Spur may have interest in the greenhouse through STEM programs. There's a lot of opportunity within the school. I know I mentioned National Green School Society, potentially other clubs. Yeah, so I would like it to kind of be a community project, an accomplishment, rather than just school centered, I guess, at the high school. And then I'll also reach out to multiple companies to see if they would be willing to donate services or materials such as the Black Locust that I mentioned before. So annual costs. This is a bit of an estimate. I would like to say thank you to Mr. Wells at Tower, who's a science teacher at Tower, who's kind of works with the greenhouse there and has been kind of helping me get some estimates. So their greenhouse is slightly bigger than this greenhouse would be. Our greenhouse is about 21 by 16. There's, I want to say it's 21 by 25. So the annual cost would be about $2,500 to $4,000. And that would be kind of heating for fuel, water, power, and then any materials and plants needed. But a majority of this would be spent for heating throughout the winter, just because you need to keep it warm. But having thick glass will help kind of keep what sunlight is, keep it in. So now I'm going to talk about the time frame. So I got the first approval I need. And for Scouts, when you're working on your Eagle project, you need to get approval from your troop's parent committee. So I got that early last month. And then tonight, school committee approval, because you need kind of approval from the project beneficiary. And then you can go to the Scout district and get approval. So I'll hopefully be able to do that next week, depending on, I guess, this meeting. And then from there, I can kind of start fundraising and seeking permits, because I'm not actually allowed to do anything until I have those three permissions. Yeah. And then once I get approved, I can start implementing the phases of my project. So in the spring, I would be working over the weekends of probably April and May to take out kind of the invasive species and replace them with native species, maybe butterfly friendly species. I know the BRYT program planted some in the raised beds, so I could maybe work with them, just to tie back to the school. And then over the summer, once I've kind of fundraising is done, I would do more of the construction, because you don't want that going on during a school time. So I'd start by kind of taking out the raised beds and getting the site ready, trenching for foundation, pouring in a cement foundation, putting in the greenhouse, and then finishing off by building and installing the new raised beds. So you're probably wondering, how am I going to get work for all of this? Who's going to be doing this labor? So Eagle projects, we typically have our troop kind of helps us out. So the Scouts and adults in my troop will kind of help me get some of this done. Now, some things are more, I guess, a technical level, you could say. So I may reach out to possibly some groups at the high school, maybe some NGSS members, other MHS clubs, maybe members of community groups, to kind of help me with this kind of harder installation of the greenhouse. So then support for my project. I have a bunch of teachers supporting me through NGSS, or their classes, such as the culinary arts classes, the Bright program. So I just like to thank everyone on this slide, especially the teachers, Mr. Bauer, Mr. Bloodgood, Ms. Cresta, and then Chief Gilliland. He's kind of been helping me on the town side. He set up a meeting with me and the town heads, where I talked with Mr. Petty and other town department heads who kind of have agreed to help me and support me in whatever way they can. So I'd just like to say thank you to all these people. Are there any questions? Wonderful.
Thank you, Tyler. This is in my opinion, this is a great project. And it's exciting to learn about it this evening. And I appreciate that you're, wanting to put your work into the schools and into sort of the curriculum aspects of it as well. I'm glad that you reached out to Mr. Wells. I was going to ask if you needed any connections to them because they've been working hard on that greenhouse and they're probably a wealth of information. So I'm glad to hear that you've connected with him. I will say to the committee that although we don't have a vote on this, Tyler would really appreciate if we were able to vote on this tonight. So I'll kind of put that plug in for him so that he can keep on his timeline and move this forward. I also spoke with Michelle earlier today about some of the additional kind of the heating costs that we would end up maintaining. And she was not concerned about that piece at all as we move forward. So I'll open it up to the committee and see if anybody has any questions. Sarah?
Tyler, first of all, thank you so much. This was a really impressive presentation. In fact, when I opened it, when you first sent us it, I called one of my friends who does this for a living to tell her how impressed I was with your presentation and how detailed, you were in the steps you went through. Thank you so much. Do you feel that you might be able to, for some of your line items, for instance, the professional review sealed drawings, we have so many wonderful, philanthropic professionals in town, that you might be able to find someone with that stamp in town that's willing to do that as a contribution in lieu of money, but a like kind of donation. And are you going to pursue ways to cut down on your overhead by reaching out to people?
Yes, that is the plan. It's kind of hard because I'm technically not allowed to do anything really until I get all the approvals. So it makes it very difficult when I'm trying to come up with cost estimates. But that is kind of the plan. So I will reach out just to see if there's anything any groups in town can do to help me. Yeah.
And then just keep in the back of your mind, the Friends of the Marblehead Public Schools grants go in and are due, I believe, sometime in February. And I'm not affiliated with them other than being eternally grateful for everything they do for our schools. But this seems like something you would at least want to put something in for and talk to. It's such a wonderful program. And, you have my full support.
Thank you.
Megan?
Can we make a motion now and then continue our conversation through that? I don't know exactly do you have the terminology or do you want me to?
Let's see. So I'll ask for a motion to approve the donation of Michelle, are you on? Before I mess this up.
I'm here.
How should I structure this motion?
Yeah, I would do a motion to approve the greenhouse project as the Eagle Scout, through the Eagle Scout program.
All right.
And I think, do we need to approve the alteration of the school grounds as well as part of this motion, I believe?
I think that would be inherent, but we can certainly mention it as well. Can't hurt.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the greenhouse project with alteration of school grounds for the Eagle Scout project?
As presented we should say as presented by Tyler Earp.
Sure, as presented by Tyler Earp.
So moved.
All right, Sarah moved.
I'll second.
Megan second. Okay, Megan, did you have a question?
Yeah, Tyler, thank you very much for this presentation. I am so impressed with how well thought out and concise it is. So I think you obviously have put in a lot of work and a lot of thought to this. So thank you for that. And thank you for coming forward with a very worthwhile idea that I think will benefit, like you said, the community and the school. The only question I do have is, Sarah, you mentioned the cost of it, but in terms of maintaining it going forward, who would maintain it?
Well, this is kind of a conversation I've had with kind of the teachers. So the BRYT program, who currently uses the raised beds, there'll be new raised beds, and obviously they'd be free to use the greenhouse. NGSS, which is kind of the environmental club, would definitely, this is right up their alley. So Mr. Ryan and Mr. Herrick are kind of on the NGSS side. And NGSS has independent projects where students kind of do service and work to kind of make their community more sustainable, I guess. So I could definitely see this as being an independent project. And then if the cooking class is, interested in growing, I don't know, peppers, tomatoes, anything that really they can grow in a greenhouse, which is a lot. I know I'd like to see dwarf citrus trees. That'd be really cool. But I think there's definitely a lot of people at the school who will maintain this. Yeah.
I almost see this working the same exact way as the Bell Organic Garden did when it was developed, where it was developed and funded by volunteers and implemented, and then it was sustained jointly because it was curriculum based through our school, as well as a stipend positions with donations. I mean, it seems like a very parallel program almost.
Mr. Bauer, you put your screen on. Did you have something to weigh in with this?
Of course. Obviously Tyler's been working on this well more than a year. He's consulted with our teachers. And I think a great question is, how does this connect to the school and, sustainability? So Tyler needs to state a little bit more in terms of the National Green School Society, because if you go into Mr. Ryan's room, you'll see 5 hydroponic stations where you can pick fresh arugula. It's actually ready right now. So there's an active interest in that, as well as the culinary arts piece. And I also see the connections with our science program, particularly with biology and our environmental science. And who knows if this could connect to a pathway somewhere down the road. So I see those as being the natural connections. And certainly I know the Bright program does work with the raised beds, but I believe there will be collaboration there. And it was stated earlier in the presentation too, and I know Tyler didn't bring this out, but I can see collaboration with our other schools too, as we're developing more STEAM programming. So that area is a great area too. That is where I've made a recommendation for another swipe card piece. And just the work flat out that Tyler's going to do for removing the invasive species will be tremendously impactful, as well, as you can note by those pictures, something that will really improve it. So I think those programs will help sustain this as we move forward, because there's a vested interest currently with this, and I can see this actually growing as it takes off.
Thanks, Dan. Emily?
Thanks, Tyler, for presenting. I just wanted to know, what grade are you in?
I'm a sophomore.
Okay, so you'll be here and we'll be able to use the greenhouse for a little bit?
Yeah, for 2 years.
Okay, because I wanted to make sure you got to use what you build. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, once again, Tyler, thanks. Having been a former Cub Scout den leader, and my son never crossed over into the troop, but from PAC 79. So congratulations on everything that you're doing. And, it's a really always fun to see the Eagle Scout projects and everything that's been done in Marblehead over the years. And you would have my full support. So let us know when we can sign up to help removing the invasive species and things like that. And I think it is, it's great to know that you're a sophomore because, you know, in the event that this sort of became a phased project where you might need to work on the site development first and a few other things as things go, or maybe if there was a delay in getting some of the supplies and things that you need, it's a good opportunity, and I appreciate all the work you've done to get the support. And as Mr. Bauer said, that's a really, I think, underutilized spot that in the last year or so the school has rediscovered, and this would really add a nice touch to the high school. So thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
One thing I just wanted, we don't need to talk about, you don't have to have an answer for us on this tonight, but as you move through this process, if you can just keep in mind with that tiered system, you said with the 8-inch drop and the 8-inch drop, that we want to make sure that this stays ADA compliant and that we have full accessibility to all the benefits of this area.
Yes, there will be 4 feet between the greenhouse and the first raised bed, 4 feet between each raised bed, kind of between. So there will be a 4-foot pathway, which would be more than enough. And with the double doors, that allows for and indoors too.
Seems like you've covered all your bases. Thank you very much. All right, we have a motion and it's been seconded, so I will take a vote. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
And Emily Barron?
Yes.
All right, that passes 5-0. Tyler, thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Can
We'll
you
have to
move
have you
us
back. Yeah, can you come back and update us as things
Yep.
move forward?
When would you like me to do that? After I get district approval and start
Yeah.
fundraising?
Sounds good. Yeah, as you start your fundraising, we'll promote that for you.
Okay.
Fundraising, and as David said, we'll definitely help you out when you need some muscle too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
All right. Good luck, Tyler.
Thank you.
All right, John, we are still within the update, so I will hand it back over to you.
Thank you. And as I said, that's an exciting project, and he did an excellent job presenting it. Principal Bauer and I had a chance to meet with him and go through that, and he really enhanced his presentation and did a nice job, and I'm glad the committee is fully behind him in supporting that. Under my update is enrollment, and I shared a sheet with the committee today, just in how I look at enrollment. You know, we use the NASDAQ 10-year, and they have predicted that we will have decrease in our enrollment, but I thought it would be interesting for you to see what the enrollment was last year, what we had budgeted for this year compared to what NASDAQ had in their numbers, what the current enrollment is, and then what we're budgeted for next year. We submitted the NASDAQ information today, so we should have that report early January, so I can add that NASDAQ number column for maybe an update in late January, early February. One of the things that I think is interesting in this is that little chart at the bottom where we look at the number of students that elect for homeschool, our out-of-district placements, vocational, charter, and public and private. And you can see in every instance, except for our out-of-district placements, that those numbers are decreasing as well. We have fewer families electing for homeschool compared to last year. The vocational enrollment has gone from 4638 to 34. Charter numbers are significantly changed compared to 1920. And then our private parochial school. At the same time, you can see that the large column, that the district enrollment in the aggregate also continues to decrease. So that, as you know, is a budget driver, the number of students in our enrollment, and we're keeping an eye on that certainly as the budget process unfolds. But I think it's important for school committee to see these numbers and to have an opportunity to ask questions about enrollment. So I open it up to you. I'll stop
Any
sharing.
questions?
The only one that jumps out to me is just on the kindergarten piece, and I know that this is almost impossible to predict.
Right.
But just given that we've had such a decrease, why are we projecting another 12? You know, like why are we projecting to go up so much?
Yeah, I think that the principals look at that, and kindergarten is, you know, a guesstimate oftentimes, but some families still with COVID in preschool, and are they keeping them out again this year because some families did not want to come back, that we were full-time and there was not a remote option. And so I think Sean and Brian are both looking at that and thinking it better to err on the side of predicting too high than too low.
Does the TK program kind of factor into that as well?
That's in our preschool number.
David?
And I think NASDAQ looks at the information on births and actual census numbers. So that's probably, I think, how they arrived at their 160 for this year. And they can continue to look at that again. And so it's kind of still in that ballpark, I think, to see. For me, I think if there could be I think that there's another layer to this that helps the public understand. So how many first grade classes do we have? How many second grade classes do we have? And I know once we get to the high school, that kind of metric is much more difficult and maybe sometimes not quite as useful as, you know, you can sort of see what happens at least K through 6 to see how many grades we have and what we're looking at with overall class size. I think that would be helpful to see another layer there as far as that goes.
Sarah or David, are you done?
Yep.
Okay, Sarah.
I had a question about one thing, but just to speak to that K number,
Muted.
I think I am. No, I'm not on mine.
Oh, sorry. I'm muted, I guess. I can't hear. Sorry.
So just having kids in that demographic, I think it's safe to look at that number is going to jump next year, because those kindergarten kids a lot of them never got preschool at all because people were not going to do preschool remote and all that stuff. So people didn't send this year because their kids had no exposure. They didn't have 3 or 4 year old program exposure the way all of our older kids did. So they've kind of held and, you know, to use the term redshirted a lot of those kids so that they get a little bit of preschool exposure before they throw them into kindergarten. So I think it is probably realistic to think we're going to see a jump in that. And then while we look at there's decreasing enrollment, I think some people in their mind say, okay, what's our per student spending? And we're going to multiply that by their decreased enrollment, and that should be our number. But we have to remember where it's spread out. You know, you don't decrease an entire class size as they go to those numbers, because what happens is at the high school where you might have gone down 20 kids, you might have one less in pre-calc and you might have one less in this section, but it's not like you just can downsize an entire teacher. So it doesn't necessarily bring, when it's, you know, when we're decreasing by that margin, there's not a gigantic savings is what I'm saying.
Well, if I could, I wasn't suggesting that at all, Sarah. So you can assume what you want from my comment, but I just want to see what the class sizes are.
No, David, that wasn't to you at all. Out in the community, I sometimes hear your numbers are going down, so, you know, it might cost this much. No, that wasn't, sorry if you took it that way. It wasn't to you at all.
I do think the sectioning numbers will be helpful because we do want to maintain equity across the district, so that at Brown School, you're not, because you have 5 sections, you can have 13 in a class, whereas at Glover, you have 4 sections and you might have 19 in a class. So we will keep an eye to that as well as we look at enrollment and numbers and sections.
Yeah, and actually that was our concern last year. We wound up flipped. We wound up with I think our class sizes at Brown are like 20% higher than our class sizes at Glover. And our concern was that it would be the worst, or the reverse.
Yes, I'm going to foreshadow that will be a conversation with the school committee as the spring unfolds, that new enrollments in the district. I don't think that we can feasibly redistrict right now, but that is a conversation for future and enrollment for new families coming in. So stay tuned for that. There've been a lot of other things that have happened in the district. I'm happy to take questions or just I did send out the TikTok challenge email to the district today. That's deeply troubling. And so I wanted that to be on everyone's radar. I was in conference with Chief King today. I know Detective Gay was working with the high school administration. That's alarming. There are no credible threats currently in the district. I do know that there are some school districts on the North Shore that have had some instances of chatter among students that is troubling. We have not had this, but I really encourage our families to have conversations at home tonight about this, because there is no margin for error on that. That is not a joke, that is not funny, and it will be dealt with very seriously.
That was upsetting. Sort of on the heels of the piece in Michigan and the anniversary of Newtown. That was an upsetting email to read this afternoon. So,
do we have capability, John, to identify any of our students that are liking or forwarding this, or no? I don't do any of this TikTok. I don't know the capabilities of all this stuff.
I do not believe that we do.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the big question. Where are we at with our masking?
Yeah, we have applied to the state and been granted the waiver. The waiver includes a very clear reference that anyone that is unvaccinated is still under the mandate to be masked. And so in working with the leadership team, they are not in a place where they want to, particularly in the next week, take on policing who should still be masked and who shouldn't be masked. I think there was an original thinking that mask optional meant that if you wanted to wear a mask, you could. If you didn't want to wear a mask, you couldn't, and people were not under the obligation to police it. In talking with Rob Curtin at the department, he said that is an eye-opening conversation he has had with superintendents, because they're like, wait, we now have to police this. So teachers, and that's what they had in Hopkinton, that they had, if you had submitted your vaccination card, you could be mask optional. But if you didn't, you're still under the obligation to be masked. And so that would be asking our staff to take on the responsibility of looking at class lists and calling out, for lack of a better word, someone who is not masked that has not submitted the proof of vaccination. So it is my recommendation that we remain masked and maybe write a letter to the department that this practice is, it's not tenable to put on educators to have to call students out for medical information that they're not masked.
Thank you for that. Obviously you and I have had a couple of conversations about it this week. And I'll just sort of kick it off. I find it very upsetting that we would have to police. It was a huge disappointment for me to hear that. I understand it in theory, and I understand, I think, on multiple levels why DESEs might have their head in that place. But I think I've spoken in here before. I don't want a scarlet letter on any of our kids. To me, the benefits of doing mask optional that were huge for me is the fact that we could see kids' faces again. And again, being in a school, when I go out for recess or I'm in the nurse's office and the child has their mask off, there's times where it's like, oh my gosh, you got your braces off. It's so great to see your smile. And it really is such a huge thing. And it's great that we've been able to get in person, and that's obviously really important, but I have a huge issue with policing this and particularly because almost all of our students don't have medical authority to say whether or not they're going to get a vaccine. And so this is, these are parental decisions, And so, but then it's being called out. And I can very easily, particularly at our older grades, see a situation where it almost becomes political as well of, I can take my mask off, you can't take your mask off. I think it devolves so quickly and it's really upsetting to me. And I also really am struggling with the idea that, okay, so we've got, on paper, we've got 87%. I actually think our vaccination rate's probably higher given some of the other numbers that we have. And 87% today, or, mid-January, like whenever our town numbers seem tenable again, like that's not good enough. But then when DESE reverses their mandate, then that 87% is going to be okay. And, and we know herd immunity percentages, and it just, there's pieces of this that just don't seem to be following the science very well. And that's been, I've said it in here before, that's been one of my pieces. David, was very clear about it at the end of last year. And this piece about policing is really upsetting to me.
I will say the day that I submitted the waiver, I got an email from Andrew Petty that said we should not be unmasking at this point because of the trajectory of town numbers. And so even if DESE had a different stance on this, I'm not sure that right now is the time for unmasking. In speaking to our professionals, I have not come across anyone saying, yes, this is a time to unmask. I was at the high school today to have a meeting with Mr. Bauer, and a parent came in and was picking up her child. I don't know the parent, and was talking to the secretary and said, I thought about being a school nurse at one point, but I do nursing at XYZ. And I said, just out of curiosity, would you unmask students at this time? And she goes, absolutely not. And just some random. So even though DESE's stance I disagree with, I'm totally on board with your thinking on this. I don't think the time now going into the holidays or that period when we come back from the holidays, because we saw the Halloween spike, we saw the Thanksgiving spike, we're seeing the Thanksgiving spike right now. So I think getting through the holidays, getting clarification from DESE. We did have a meeting with the commissioner yesterday, and they are going to update they were getting ready to update, but because of the current variant, he is asked to wait until after the first of the year. So I anticipate a meeting with the commissioner the first week that we get back and being able to update the committee at our first meeting in January.
And just before anybody else speaks, I totally agree with that. I put out the mid-January number, when we talked about this at our last meeting. So I completely agree with it. My big sticking point is sort of that policing piece and the continued mandate piece that again, I can kind of sort of see where it makes sense, but then when I break it down, it just really ceases to make sense pretty quickly. Megan, did you have something?
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. I would like us to use this time to have those conversations, and also with your other superintendent network, to see, if there's some momentum that we can start to build there, because I don't believe that mandate follows the science. And I don't believe that it's in the best interest of our teachers or our students to be policing that. And when we're at the point where it is safe to do so, we need to be able to be safe to do so. And so I'd like us to do as much as we can now to get that legwork done.
Sarah?
Because of the way DESE is mandating this policing piece, my other question is, how are we going to establish who we're policing? Because my understanding is we were not successful in getting people to willfully hand in their vaccination cards, that we went to the state database to get to our 87%. So that means, in theory, we'll be using that same state database to then identify, basically in reverse, who is not vaccinated, to develop that list that then staff uses to police if we choose to go that route. I mean, my question is, what is the policy and procedure around this?
I do think that Hopkinton set a model, and they had the waiver approved and then put out to families a simple Google form that said, I am consenting for my child to be unmasked in school, and here's the vaccination card. Some people will not submit that are vaccinated and they want the student to remain masked. And so I would see us following something similar, that if it's on file with the district or with the school, that's how we have that information. And if we don't have the information, those would be students that would need to remain masked, at least up until the current DESE deadline of, I think, January 15th.
So we wouldn't use that database to verify?
I would not.
Okay.
I think that that's a family decision.
But I don't think we're hearing anyone here say that we would support policing. I mean, I haven't heard that.
No.
Okay. And then, because I was going to bring this up under new business, but since we're talking about the masking, I do have to say I'm extremely disappointed that I heard about this via a member in the community who told me they heard about it at the health meeting, because a member of the SALT committee gave it in an update, and then I heard about it on Facebook. And until right now, I never heard about it in any official capacity. And that's concerning to me, that these decisions and these discussions are happening at, I don't know what the acronym SALT stands for, but it's a superintendent's advisory something, I'm assuming. And, you know, we were elected to the school committee for policy, for budget, for all of these things. And my concern is that I'm hearing about stuff through other boards and social media, and not through this board or our superintendent. And that's very concerning and disappointing to me.
Have you set up a weekly schedule to meet with the superintendent?
No, because this is a public body where we have public meetings, Sarah.
Right, but we're also elected to do a job, and all of it isn't just what we hear at this meeting.
Emily, did you hear about this in official capacity, or did you hear about this as hearsay in the community?
I did hear it as hearsay, and I met with John this afternoon and I told him my concern. So yes, and I told him I was not happy about it either. So I think, I don't know what we can do in this situation, but information should be shared to the committee before other people. And that's what we talked about.
Do you meet with the superintendent regularly?
I try to.
Same. Megan, David, Sarah?
What's the question?
Do you meet with the superintendent regularly?
Yes.
I talk with John quite often.
I mean, I talked to John I talked to him almost weekly. I just don't have a standing appointment with him. The fact is
Can I just clarify though, like, this is the first school committee meeting we've had since you got the waiver approval. Am I correct there? So the first public meeting we've had about it. So I'm not sure when we're supposed to update you.
I guess I don't understand what the purpose of SALT is. I mean, I know that John should and definitely does have his meetings with his leadership team. That's where operational discussions happen. That's what's always happened. And we have our school committee meetings, and this other feels, quite honestly, like a hand-picked school committee, and we're all elected to do certain jobs, and we have hired professionals to do operational jobs, and they are just amazing at that. But then we have all these individuals that seem like they were handpicked and have become a de facto school committee to me.
So so the superintendent can and should have advisory committees. That's part of his job. So he can have whatever advisory committees he wants, and he can have the membership on those advisory committees however he sees fit to do his job effectively.
I believe that's in a state statute as well.
So I don't believe, and I mean, someone please correct me if I'm wrong here, there are no decisions made in those SALT meetings. It is literally for John to get advisement and information from a broad variety of stakeholders. So that includes leadership team, teachers, members from the community, parents, especially when we're still working through a number of COVID protocols. I think an advisory committee is appropriate in that sense. It's my 2 cents. That's John's role.
Who are the school committee representatives to that?
That's been talked about multiple times, and it was discussed at the summer meeting, and it's Megan and myself. It's carried through from last year because it continues to be only about COVID and and COVID implications, and there is never a policy decision made. It is people giving their thoughts, and sometimes it's frustrating to leave that meeting because it feels as though nothing has happened other than people have talked.
So just in terms of a chronology, and I have checked with legal, and superintendent advisory committees are perfectly within the letter and the spirit of Mass General Law and open meeting law. I got notification from DESE on Monday that the waiver had been approved. I talked with the superintendent's advisory and leadership team on Tuesday morning. No budget discussions, no policy implications, just my thinking around masking or unmasking, given now that we had the waiver, knowing that it would come up at tonight's school committee meetings. I can't stay ahead of rumor mills and shared information, and certainly Emily came in to meet with me today. I'm happy to have conversations with any member of the school committee at any time if there's something that gets to you that you felt that it should have come to me or come from me. It was not withholding any information. It's literally 3 days into it.
And if the Board of Health wants to overrule us, they can overrule us. There's not many that can do that in when it comes to various decisions, but the Board of Health can mandate things, and they've chosen not to. I was on that call the other night, and they're still continuing to, they specifically said they didn't want to mandate, that they're strongly recommending masking. So, this continues to remain in our control.
No, this isn't about the content. This is about, I would like to just moving forward when large things like applying for a waiver and getting the waiver from DESE happen. This is a relatively important thing.
It's a very important thing.
Yeah, that's my point. I was trying to soften the blow to the fact that we heard about it in the way we did, rather than just a simple email update from, John, we applied for the waiver on this date, we received it.
Moving on. Anybody else have any thoughts on the mask piece? I think you had your hand up.
Yeah. Just kind of to continue what everyone said, I will not support policing masking at all. So I feel so strongly that we cannot do that, even if we have the waiver. I think we need to, like Megan said, do anything we can to get that taken out, because it's kind of absurd. And I think we all need to think about what we want to do about masking going forward, because we have to do something, because it's kind of gotten too far, I think, for a lot of children and kids. So I just wanted to make my.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to go ahead, and then David, I definitely, I don't think we have to make any official decision on this. We may at our next school committee meeting after when we come back in January. So David, I'll let you take.
So I assume there's something that's forthcoming from DESE in writing, right? That you don't have, or you mentioned that's coming, that we'll talk about if you choose to go down this path, and it describes or the prescribed steps that need to be taken. I'd like to see that, and then maybe, if it's the preference of the committee at a future date, we take a motion and a vote to send a note to DESE letting them know that we're either in favor of the policing of the masks or we're not, and that how it is limiting the ability of local committees to make decisions, based on, vaccination rates and the like, and something that we might be able to consider. And then, I'd like to just get back to, one I wanted to just comment, I look at I look at what I do as a committee member, and we all have our lives outside of being a school committee member. And, you know, just looking at my email today, you know, we had an event at the Brown School that, I don't know, Dr. Bucky, that took up a few minutes of your day. I think that got handled very well. And there was ample communication that was going and flowing throughout the day. I see information related to hockey games that's been passed on, information related to TikTok that's been passed on. You know, the emails are just so numerous, and all of this information is well in advance of, however, I'm not connected to the Rumor Mill network, or I'm not connected to any of these social pages, but it's all very relevant and it's all very current. And so I think I'm very well informed, as well as, you know, having the opportunity to talk with Dr. Bucky. He always takes my call if I do ever hear anything that I don't feel informed about. Just want to say that.
I will also, I'll go on record with Emily. I don't know that I can make such as quite as strong a statement, but I am having a very difficult time supporting unmasking anybody if we're going to have to police it.
So just for clarification, when we send a letter or vote to send a letter, would that letter just be saying we are opposed to your policy and we're requesting you look at it and change it? Or would it be, or is there a suggestion that it might be a letter saying we will not adhere to your policy?
I don't think we have the option to not adhere to it.
Well, yeah,
it's a mandate. Yeah, and that's where I think in the beginning it appeared in the original statement that it was a mandate until they approved it, and then it flopped down to guidance that we could choose to, you know, and again, we would always strongly encourage that people that aren't vaccinated continue to mask, but that we weren't going to need to police it, and that's what's changed. So I wouldn't send any letter. I know as chair as I technically can. I would not send a letter until we had run it through the committee in a meeting. So I will do my best over the holidays to draft something up so that we can have it at that first meeting. All right, John. Anything else?
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Michelle, that brings us to our finance and organizational support. Michelle was under the weather yesterday, so she did not get a chance to do the monthly finance update. So we will have that. You'll be set for the first meeting in January?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we have some schedules. So I will quickly ask, I had like 6 of these. Do you have this, I just need the motion for actually how much.
I have it right here if you need, sir.
I've got, John made a bunch of, here we go, I've got it. I knew there were a bunch of copies floating around here, I apologize. All right, so the schedules and everything were in our packet. Can I get a motion to approve the identified schedule of bills totaling $2,713,759.46. Megan moved.
Second.
Emily second. Any questions on any of those? All right, Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
And Emily Barron?
Yes.
All right, those pass 5-0. Thank you, Michelle. And then I will let you sort of fill in any of the gaps or highlights we've got a memo about the resolution to go into an agreement about a P-card program.
Yes, so I do want to apologize about the finance reports, and I definitely will have those for you the next meeting. This week certainly did not go as planned, but I'm glad we got to the P-card program, and I did actually forget to put the 2-line resolution on there, but I will catch up with you after the fact, Sarah, on that one. So the P-card program, it is essentially a credit card program. We have tried to dissuade personal reimbursements, which have been extremely great in number since I've been here, and I've been trying to reduce those. Essentially, we want to eliminate all personal reimbursements because you have a question of really whose ownership is it. And we don't have the control of pre-approving purchases when someone does a credit card purchase in their own personal credit card and then submits for reimbursement. So ideally, we want a credit card. We have actually been using part of the town's credit card for the past year. Sometimes that becomes a little difficult. So we want to streamline the process. And the MASBO, which is the Mass Association of School Business Officials, promotes this P card program. It's a purchase card. It works just like a MasterCard. It's MasterCard based, but it has a lot of great, bells and whistles basically built into municipalities and school districts. It allows for complete control of all the accounts by system administrators. I could log in, activate a card, deactivate a card, change a credit limit instantly, only allow certain vendors to be used. Basically, it puts so much control in our hands, which is great, so that it's not just a wide open credit card with a certain credit limit. It does allow us to assign separate cards to either each school, to each department, or to individuals. It does not have an annual fee. It only has an interest charge if we should be late, which we will never be late on this one. It has a small annual cashback benefit. So once a year, they actually send you back a check, which is nice because the amount that I do anticipate we'll probably be using on it, we'll be getting something back, which is a benefit. And it is actually very widely used by most Massachusetts school districts who allow credit cards, and in the town of Marblehead does allow credit cards. So that's not an issue. It's also the same program that I did use in my previous school district. As I said, it's used in a lot of school districts. It's actually a national program through the Bank of Montreal. And it was put together and procured by the Illinois chapter of the Association of School Business Officials. And they rolled it out to every individual chapter of any state chapter of the Association of School Business Officials. So it's actually a nationwide program. But it's great. It really is. In my last district, I had a $5,000 charge that we didn't authorize, and they immediately took it off, never questioned it, didn't even put it in investigation. They just, their customer service is wonderful. So I do have great experience with them. I'd like to, move forward and submit an application so we can actually get our own account. But it does require a resolution of the school committee. It's basically just entering into the agreement. There's nothing unusual or, difficult that would create anything that, any difficulty for us at all. It's really a great program. So I just wanted to bring it before the committee, see if we can get resolution. And there is a motion on the bottom of that memo. And then it's literally a 2-line resolution that the chairperson has to sign.
All right. So I will ask for that motion and then ask for any questions. So can I get a motion to enter into an agreement with the Bank of Montreal for purchasing cards and to allow the chairperson to sign the resolution on the committee's behalf?
So moved.
Sarah moved. David, you want a second? Okay, thanks. All right, any questions? You're muted.
Having one at my job, I think it's a great tool to have. And I think each user can go in and review their transactions. And then there's a summary that rolls up. And as Michelle said, you can, certain types of purchases are not allowed, and you can really control it much more than you can with a credit card. It comes usually with a tax exempt ID right on it. So it ensures that purchases, and I can't even imagine the employee will enjoy it because then they won't have to wait for a reimbursement to come back to them. So I think it's win-win. Really great job.
Yeah, it really is a great program, and it will just, continue to move our processes in a more manageable and effective manner. So,
and you'll be able to properly attach purchase orders to this, because I know that's something we're trying to do more of as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't necessarily have a question. I just want to say this is one more way that Michelle is making our financial processes more efficient and more effective and more streamlined. And I think if you recommend it to enhance our processes, then I support it 100%.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll take a vote. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor,
Yes.
Sarah Fox,
Yes.
and Emily Barron.
Yes.
All right, that passes 5-0.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, that moves us forward into school committee items. First up is our facilities capital request presentation. Emily, I have already given you co-host stuff, so you can share.
Okay. Is that good? Okay.
So as you can see, the number, the total at the bottom is very dissimilar from the number we've seen in the past. So it's definitely going to drive some more discussion. All of these items came out of our capital needs assessment, which was funded through the capital request last year. That assessment was provided, and we've worked through that in a very deliberate way through our committee. And these are the items that were all labeled as critical by the assessment at the time that they gave it to us. I think it came in January or February, Michelle. So many of these needs, when they listed them as they listed critical, and then FY22 and FY23. So technically we're working on FY23 on things that they suggested we do immediately. As we all know, there's no way possible that we could fund these needs immediately. As you go through, the biggest one obviously is the high school roof. This is a number that is a little startling, but not unsurprising. Or not surprising, I should say. We've known we needed a roof for a long time. We have numerous leaks reported and observed. On any given rainy day, you can see the staff over at Marblehead High School actually putting buckets out in classrooms and hallways and collecting water that's dripping through. So the issue with that right now, why the price has risen so much, is due to everything that's going on with inflation. Things that a couple of years ago, if we had done this, would have been about $1 million, now are much higher. It's kind of that pay now or pay later idea. So in addition to that roof, we have the Vets roof. Now, it's not the entire roof at Vets that would be replaced. It's that wing. If you are over there, it's where the MHTV wing is in Magic Hat. At the time that we renovated the building, that portion was not renovated, that portion of the roof. So that's long overdue as well. And then the other are safety driven or just, items that had been in capital asks multiple years in a row in preceding years. And we didn't have a funding mechanism for it. So essentially where we're at now is these are quite critical. It was unanimous at the facilities committee level, which is Emily, myself, Dr. Bucky, Michelle, Todd, and Jeff St. George, who is a professional working in this arena of facilities management. If you have questions on any particular line item, we're happy to talk to those. We have Todd on here, Michelle on here. And also, although, I can give you some of the information right now. There's the assessment that came out was very detailed. They get into, and you guys have had that in your Dropbox since for several months now. But all these line items can be backtracked to the line item on the assessment, where it gives very detailed information, how many millimeters our current roof is, things like that, like much more technical than we're presenting right now, just because it, in my opinion, gets a bit into the weeds for the school committee level. So if there's any questions, feel free, but essentially what we came to at facilities is our recommendation would be is to go for a capital needs debt exclusion override for this total. It's unrealistic for us to think that the town could meet this need through any other funding mechanism, to be perfectly honest. We don't have this in free cash. And so we would suggest that we go sponsor a debt exclusion override for the capital needs. And that would get us basically up to par of where we need to be for the things we haven't been able to kind of keep on top of.
Emily, do you want to add anything?
I'll just say that these items are listed as like number one is of highest priority. And then I would say as we go down, maybe towards the bottom, it gets a little less, but I think we do need to do as much of this as we can, because this will just get us to like where we should be, because then we're going to keep using our buildings and they're keep going to be maintained. So this will like level everything for now, and then we can move forward. But it is a little daunting, but I think if we are going to provide the exemplary education that we're talking about, we need to have a space to do it in that is, you know, up to the standards of everything else that we've been discussing. But if you have questions, happy to answer.
And just to reflect back on that needs assessment, in that it talks about life expectancy of these different items. And we're in line with our life expectancy. I know some out and about in town, sometimes you hear people refer to it as the new high school. It actually isn't the new high school. It's 20 years old, and the life expectancy on a roof is 20 years. So we're, excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. We're right where we should be. But we really need to do this, in my opinion.
Okay.
Sarah or Emily, can you just refresh my memory? Who was the consultant that we funded the budget last year to do something?
I'm going to punt that to Michelle, because she's the one that handled the contracts on that. I can pull it up from my email, but she might know just off the top of her head.
Of course not. I'm pulling it up right now.
That's fine. And I was just wondering if we've expended all of those fees or we have any left where we can still engage them.
I believe that was a capital request from 2 cycles ago.
Right. So if we just wondered if we have any funds left in case we need to get some additional.
No, we do not have any funds left specifically for that project, and it was EBI Consulting Company, I believe, out of Burlington, Massachusetts.
The only other thing that is not included here, and David, this term will definitely jump out to you, is because the roof is over $1 million capital expenditure in the state of Massachusetts on a school building, I believe we will need a OPM to run that project as well. And we need to seek clarification. I'm sorry, I like need a drink. If that 3.9 million includes OPM fees, because I do believe we're over the threshold of needing an OPM to manage that project.
Megan?
Just on that roof, I know prices have gone up, but I mean, this is a huge jump. So I have 2 questions off the top of my head, because this is the first time I'm seeing it. But what exactly does that roof include? Because I know we've talked about having solar panels. So does that include solar panels? And my second question to that is this just, how many quotes did we get to come up with this number?
So as far as the solar panels go, yesterday, myself and Emily met with Alexa Singer, who is the selectman's representative to the Green Committee, as well as the administrator at the light department, Joe Kowalik. And we had a really great conversation about solar panels and what would be needed to be solar ready on the roof. He explained a lot to us about how they would put the meters, this would be installed in front of the meter, not behind the meter. And we got a whole education on the difference. And we also we looked at a list at what the solar potential in our whole town is and how it pertains to the schools. And what was really telling is, if we take the property off in Salem, because that has a lot of intricacies in it that just, I don't think that they're willing to kind of weed into right now. The schools actually control 67% of the potential acreage for solar. So that's really, really huge. One of the things we looked at was obviously the roof at the high school, but we talked about the Brown roof and the Vets roof as well. And we asked him to connect with Todd to make sure that any and all specs to make this PV ready would be available. And at that time, Joe assured us that anything that would needed to be done to make these PV ready and to install the solar, they would make cost neutral for us. They would absorb, it would not be a cost to the schools. They would absorb that. So we know that. And then as far as the quote goes, we did receive a quote. And what I was actually, I was just talking about this today. For this would obviously have to, at that price, go out to bid. Although I think right now we have just the one quote. Any reputable company giving a quote is not going to give you something so extremely outlandish because they're aware that this has to go out to quote. So we had decided, at first there was a thought process of, should we only ask for half of it because we won't get it? And my argument was, we can't tell the town we're going to get them a new roof if we're being told by professionals this is what it costs. And the way it would work is, obviously we all know this, but anybody in the public that's on that might not know it. If we borrow it and then it comes in less, you just don't borrow that extra money. It's not that we borrow it and give it back. You just don't borrow the extra money. This is a cap. So if we come in under, then we come in under and there's a savings to the town, but we don't exceed this number. We just want to make sure that we, at the end of the day, are using real numbers. And Todd was confident with the professionals he was working with. We certainly can get more information. One of the things they said is people are hesitant right now to even put that number down on paper because prices are so volatile that anything they put in a formal quote, they're locked into not going any higher. And companies don't even want to give those right now because they don't want to be locked in when prices go up.
Megan?
So I'm still not clear if this price includes solar panels or not.
The actual panel itself?
Does
no,
the 3.9 include the cost for solar panels on the high school roof? Yes or no?
No, it does not include solar panels, but any solar panels that we are able to install would actually reduce our cost overall.
Okay. And secondly, I take your point about the estimate, but if we're going to go to the town and ask them for this money, we have to do our due diligence. So if we were to do this at your house, you would get more than one quote before you go to the bank and ask for a loan.
Oh no, and we certainly are. It's not for lack of trying, Megan. I guess I don't think I said it clearly. We are trying to do that. Companies are not, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd. Companies, escalation is happening at such an unheard of rate. We're not getting responses. So we're bringing you the response we have right now. We're working further for more responses. We're meeting again.
If I can jump in 1 second, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, absolutely not.
I did reach out to, it was either 6 or 8 different roofing companies that handle very large buildings. And this is the only one that actually showed up and gave me a quote. I reached out because I always get at least 3, sometimes 5 or 6 to make sure that we're, getting the best price and we're getting a fair price. But as Sarah was saying, many of these companies will not even give me an upfront price because their supplies just keep moving And, you know, I've not gotten into arguments with some of them, but if I need a price, I need a price, you know. But I'll reach out to another 20 of them. You know, I would make sure that we're at least in the ballpark. The other thing that this company told me is that I got this quote in late May, I believe it was, and they said that they're not even sure that they would be able to do it this upcoming summer, being summer of 22. And even if they were to be able to do it, it would be done a wing at a time. It's most likely too big of a project just to get it done in one summer, because it's ripping everything right off to the bare metal sheathing that's underneath and doing corner to corner up around all the rooftop units. Every single part of that roof needs to get done, including above the library, which is asphalt shingles, which is of the same age as well. So it would be, a lot of the money would be honestly just the size of the equipment we'd have to bring in to get everything up there. Cranes, I think they're running about $3,000 to $4,000 for half a day rental, just for something like that. But absolutely, you know, I would get many more quotes.
Yeah. And also, one thought I had was to reach out. We have some great relationships that David's helped foster with Gilbane in Leftfield. I was just going to reach out and have a conversation with them and say, you know, is this something that as we're going through this quote process, obviously this isn't the same as going through the bid process, that's down the line, but that you'd want to talk to us and look at, and we know we trust these people and see what they think.
Yeah, I just think we need to, you know, be 100% sure, or not 100% sure, that's impossible, but, you know, fine tune this number a little bit with a little bit further information. But Sarah, did you post for that meeting with Alexa and the light department?
No, Alexa invited us to it, and we did not have a quorum of our committee. Our committee.
You are the committee. You and Emily are the committee.
No, we voted.
Yes, Sarah. No, that's an open meeting violation.
You are the committee. The two subcommittee members are the only voting members.
We vote, all of us, at every committee.
That's
meeting.
Incorrect.
That's how I've been on the committee for 3 years. It's how we've always run it. And that's how it was run long before I came.
Okay, it's incorrect. And if you two are going to meet, you have to post it. That's an open meeting violation. Just like if David and I were to meet and talk about budget, we have to post it.
But you don't have any other members to your committee.
We absolutely do.
Superintendent Michelle, if David and Megan went over and met with Jason, I cannot imagine the uproar. It would hit the front page.
I will absolutely call tomorrow and walk through this with them and file anything I need to file, because that's the proper thing to do. And I have absolutely no problem whatsoever doing that. And I'll also check back through our policies and procedures of how that our committee has been run in the past.
The past doesn't matter. It's what is correct by how it needs to be run. So I've had a conversation with Dorothy about this, because I was concerned when we had a member on who was outside of the school district, who was not employed with the school district. And Dorothy had said, no, that's fine. It's the only voting members are the school committee members.
So just for clarification, the building committee is a subcommittee of the school committee. And this was, as always, in my experience, been run as a subcommittee of the school committee with two liaisons, the same way the building committee is a subcommittee of the school committee.
The building committee was also structured incorrectly from its get-go. That's why it moved once I became chair and we started to work through these things. That's why it moved and stopped being a subcommittee.
I wasn't aware the building committee ever stopped being a subcommittee.
It was titled differently.
I will.
My point is, let's just make sure that we post when our subcommittees are meeting so that everybody is aware that a meeting is happening and we can take proper minutes. That's my point.
Oh, no, that's absolutely fine. And I will call and clarify that absolutely as well too.
Yeah. Moving right along. So can I just get a clarification on what comp controls is? I might have missed that when I stepped away for 740,000.
Computer controls.
Computer controls. Okay, so that's something that Steve
to
all the
yeah
that's for all the HVAC systems throughout the schools. The one at the high school is the age of the high school, you know, veterans, they're all original to the buildings. That's all. And that includes a lot of updating of any sort of VAV boxes, which control, you know, specific airflows to each room, things like that. So it's basically upgrading the system. All the systems, I'm sorry.
Right. Okay. And the only other, question as we start to go through our budget discussions in the next couple of months, I wanted to just ask the committee and also ask Michelle, are there any areas within this that the $1 million of ESSER funds that we still have outstanding could be applied to within those guidelines potentially on some of these items?
We could look into that. Actually, there was something that was released today regarding people who have submitted ESSER grant applications for facility improvements. They're actually not approving those at the current moment. So there's a little more homework or investigation needs to be done in terms of what the ESSER guidelines are for facilities improvement. So it has not been determined if that's really an allowable cost for these ESSER funds, for the ESSER 3 funds, I should say.
Right, and I that's good to know. And I'm also thinking, you know, as it relates to facility upgrades, I'm sort of looking at, for instance, security cameras being sort of a subset to the facility itself. And was wondering, as an example, if security cameras might be allowable, but
I don't think so, to be honest. I'm not positive, but we are exploring to see if there are any other grants in terms of security measures. So we're exploring those opportunities as well.
And I know we did a lot of work on our HVAC systems during the pandemic and probably continue to do that. So also just wondering about the high school boiler, if that might some way relate to, the safety of the facility. And
I would consider infrastructure for that.
Infrastructure.
Building. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just thought I'd ask the question there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's the only other thing I would say is it's interesting. It's good to see this. So thank you, Emily and Sarah and Todd and Michelle and everybody that's been involved in this. I think it's definitely worthwhile that we went through this process and we're starting to look ahead. We even heard, for instance, that the turf field is, as an example, Greg told us is 2 or 3 years away potentially from needing a replacement, and there'll be these laddered replacements as we go out. But I think if you look at the value of the school assets that we have, and I haven't done that to come up with the number, but a good number usually is 1% to 2%. If our schools properties are in the range of replacement value is somewhere around $300 million with all the schools that we have, 1% is $3 million, 2% $6 million. It's a pretty realistic ballpark number of what you would budget with assets valued at that high a dollar figure. And you can go down through all these individual ones, and we certainly will do that, but it's within a reasonableness for sure, even though it strikes people, I'm sure, as being a big number. But if you think about the properties that we have and looking at these things that we need to maintain. It's, you know, something that we need to be addressing for sure.
And John shared with our committee something that really brought some levity to this. Can you share with everyone what Nantucket's going for this year?
They're looking at a $16.9 million capital request for the school department alone.
And will they get it?
Yes.
And how many student district is that?
It's roughly half the size. They were around 1,600 when I left.
Megan?
There are just some things in here that were also on the operating budget request. So I'm assuming that if they're on here, then they can come off that list. So the high school doors, security, some of the playground stuff, right? Okay, so we can subtract that out of those requests.
Yeah,
okay.
We thought it was better to have them on this list because it made more sense. Yeah, so that is happening. Yeah.
So we should probably just update that.
Yeah, so
we just need Michelle to kind of guide us on what the proper funding mechanism on each one of these is and where it should lie.
I will just say this is the first time I'm seeing this list. That I had asked Todd today to pull some of those things that he had presented in operating and maybe transfer them to facilities, which I think is probably most appropriate. But this list in this form is the first time I'm seeing it.
So this is the same list that we had presented at our meeting. We just pulled off the non-critical. All those other items that were non-critical in that 2-page list, we just pulled all those off. So it's just a simplified version of what we presented the other day.
Can I go back to the roof, the high school roof? So, I need you to repeat something, Sarah, because I just didn't totally catch it. So it's taking it down. In my understanding of when a roof is fitted and for solar, it has to be sort of reinforced. So it's a more expensive roof to put solar, to prepare it to have solar than it is if we just ripped off the roof and put and
so when I asked Joe that exact question yesterday, and he didn't feel there was, I asked him what specs he would need, because in my mind you would need like reinforced, and he said they've been on this roof before, they've looked at this with Todd, he was going to touch base with Todd, but he didn't feel there was anything specific in the spec that would change our number. It would not make it bigger. It would make it cost neutral or less. And I was concerned on if we are going for a debt exclusion override, if that's where we're headed, and the light department is going to do a portion of it being the lights, like how would we work that? And where that was actually Alexa and Joe's meeting, and they invited me to it, and I guess I got into the slip up because I didn't want to exclude Emily, and I invited Emily. So when so Alexa talked to Jason, and he said to her, he didn't feel we needed to have Joe's number. He felt our number was okay to go forward with, and that Joe's number would be Joe's number, if that makes sense.
Okay, I think it does. And then can you just, and I apologize for missing this too. Can you just repeat then what the piece about the solar panels, when the light, like if and when we decide to, or the town decides to put the solar panels on, because the way that I'm understanding it, and kind of this conversation plus a few others that have occurred, is that it would not be solar panels simply to light the high school. It would be solar panels that the energy would be harvested and used throughout town.
So if it was going to light the high school, I learned this term yesterday, so I'm kind of excited to. If it was going to be used to light the high school, it would come in behind the meter, meaning we would draw our electricity off the solar before drawing off the meter. Joe is not going to install for that. That's not what he's looking to install these for. He would be installing in front of the meter, meaning it would flow back into the grid. We would not gain power. We'd be giving them real estate essentially. And so I kind of talked to him about well, we're giving you something that's marketable and you can market it at a higher rate and you can use it for off-peak hours. And we most certainly want to be sustainable. But if there's a way to kind of share that benefit, now he's governed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 164, which really governs how he makes his money and how they have to do it for profit. And so he's governed on what he can and can't do. So there's a few like tricky mechanisms here, but at the end of the day, it's definitely more sustainable, but we won't be using, we would have to buy the solar power because we'll have all of town will have an opportunity to say, I want to buy sustainable power. I want to buy just power, if you know what I mean. So then we would have to make that decision.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. And some of that is harkening back to the conversation when Joe was with us over the summer too. I think I get that. Yeah, because I know, one of the things that had come up a few years ago when we were in crisis was the fact that the schools are the largest consumer of power in the town. And so, it would be great to try to work within that too, because that is a massive budget line for us.
Yeah.
But
he
it's
was
helpful.
Very clear. He was putting it on the outside of the meter or the front of the meter, and that there's no way to give us like a discounted rate because we're housing those.
But we wouldn't pay to put the panels up there.
No. And
okay.
That's why we wouldn't pay. That they would do that. They would make it at least cost neutral. And then I kind of, market it a little bit for, well, we're giving you this real estate, which we want to do because it's sustainable, but can you maybe cost share the roof a little bit? So there was no commitments or things other than he promised it would be at the minimum cost neutral.
And it doesn't sound as though readying the roof for solar is going to cost us any more than just replacing the roof.
No,
okay.
He said he would make sure it didn't. That's what he meant by cost neutral. If for some reason we found out it was going to cost another $400,000, he would take on that expense.
Okay.
And there was another, so also he suggested that there'd be a lag time from getting a new roof till when he'd want to put the solar up. Because the last thing you want to do is put solar up right away and find out the roof installation wasn't exactly the way it was supposed to, and then have to rip the solar off to fix the roof. You want to let it sit for a period of, he said, about a year.
Okay, that's good to know. And then as far as asking for, like, if and when we go in for this ask, and they can't put the roof on for, it may not happen this coming fiscal year. That doesn't cause any problems for us, correct?
Who's that? Do you mean that they can't put their solar panels?
No, that the roof, I think Todd mentioned it, that the roofing companies are so behind or backed up, and this is such a huge job that it
once we secure the bond, so it's kind of like with the school, like we had a general idea of the start date, but and then you move to the bid process and the outlay. So we secure the bond first.
Yep.
Before we enter into a contract, and then the bond is secured. And when it happens, obviously we want it to happen as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
And I think Dan Bauer probably does too. But once you secure the bond, you've secured the bond.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right.
If we're done talking about the numbers, can I just add something here? Because I think as a committee, we have to be really careful to be sure that we are not overstepping our bounds. And the superintendent is our CEO. He is responsible for the day-to-day operations of this district. And at the beginning of every year, we set our protocols and we vote on them. And we are therefore abide to follow them. So we should not, in any circumstances, be having meetings like this and not including the superintendent. He cannot properly run our schools if we do not include him in the meetings where we're talking about facilities, budget, how we're going to, what changes we might be making to our buildings. We have to include the superintendent. We have a protocol that says we will not have these types of meetings with other areas, other departments, other officials in this town without going through the superintendent, because he is responsible at the end of the day. So this is all great work. I don't want to take away from that. But in order for us to be a productive and functional committee and school district, we have to be sure that we are including our district leaders when we have these types of conversations.
I don't know why you assumed he wasn't. We talked about at our facilities meeting who would reach out and talk to Joe. And it was decided at our meeting with John there and with his approval that it would be Emily and I. And it just took us a long time because Joe was away on vacation for a week. So John knew that we were in the process of trying to meet with Joe and what the content of the conversation was going to be, and that we would bring that information back. So at all times we were open and transparent, and John knew we were going to. I got a text the night prior to the meeting at 10 o'clock at night asking me if I could attend a meeting the following morning at 10 a.m. And I promptly at 10 o'clock at night let Emily know I had just gotten the information. But at all times, John knew we were playing phone tag with Joe and just trying to pin down a meeting.
I think we need to include the superintendent in these types of meetings.
I also think, and I remember a couple of years ago,
he wasn't excluded. He was okay in our meeting with all people there in agreement that this was the avenue we were going to take. I mean, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong. John was always.
It's true. That's what happened. It's in my notes that I took that we were going to meet with him. So maybe it was an oversight when we were talking about it in the meeting and we didn't understand, but I do have to say that's what we discussed.
I also think that there was a real problem in even just the chair communicating with Jason a few years ago as we discussed our protocols. And so it's one of these pieces that has just never really sat well with me, that board to board, we communicate. You know, when I need to ask something about the town, I will reach out to Jackie Belfbecker. She's my peer. But I have tried very, very hard not to reach out to Jason, because Jason and John have that relationship, and that's the correct way that information is flowing. So I just want to, I just, Megan, I appreciate the comment. It slows things down for sure, and it makes things more cumbersome. But so do open meetings. So. It's that way for a reason.
I would just add, I'm sure there'd be situations where, or the superintendent's designee could, be Todd or Michelle, as an example, given the roles that they both have. So, yeah. All right.
I appreciate this. Let's just continue to drill into it. I'm going to make sure that it's an into, not a down. And just make sure that like all the facade stuff, like building interiors, like those are really broad things. And I know one of the ways I was approaching the budget meetings the other night is just really wanting to understand exactly what we're asking for, so that when we're going out into the community, we can really explain like what that means.
It was originally on this. I took it off because there was a lot of information on the list, but we do have exactly, like the facade is bowed bricks at the village school. I can get that information too, of exactly what everything.
Great, thanks.
And again, this is all on the facilities report you guys have had for 6 months, maybe 7.
Yeah, and I've put that report in a couple of Dropboxes at this point. So it exists in multiple places now. I just, I think you guys have a lot better working knowledge of it.
And then I would just say, I think one of the things that Megan and I and Michelle and Dr. Bucky can do when we have our budget meetings is just make sure we know when the town warrant is going to open and close, and that we at least get the proper warrant articles reserved, because as everybody knows, you don't need to have a dollar figure attached to those warrant articles. We just need to make sure we have the warrant articles
absolutely
in place.
Yep. All right. Thank you. So that leads us back to, I guess, thank you. back to the school children's bill that had gone into everybody's Dropbox. And we had a conversation about it at our last meeting, which was a while ago. So I know everybody sort of wished for a little bit of additional time. We've had that. Before I ask for a motion, I actually just want to know, like, are we interested in signing on to this resolution of support for the pesticide protection for Massachusetts school children?
I'm not against it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess maybe you're not against it. All right, can I'll ask for a motion then to support the resolution that is stated as such regarding the support of H926, an act relative to improving pesticide protection for Massachusetts school children.
So moved.
David moved.
Second.
Emily second. All right, any further conversations? I know there was a little bit of discussion around which chemicals were which. I believe I forwarded on the original conversation with the woman who reached out to, I think it was originally David on it, but who I've been in communication with. Anybody have anything?
Just to clarify, this does not supersede our town's public health. We have certain pesticides that are not allowed through our public health department. And I'm sorry, I called it it's not a pesticide. The one in here, it's a herbicide. And this is on their approved list. So this is a resolution that we feel it shouldn't be, but that doesn't change the legality of the fact that it is and will still continue to be legal in Marblehead.
Right, absolutely. And this is us just saying, you know, just as we were talking about sort of petitioning to DESE, this is an official resolution going to the legislatures, the state legislatures, saying about this HR or H926, saying that the Marblehead School Committee supports it. If the legislature chooses to pick it up and passes it, then that is where it would come back to the town with, you know, further regulations. All right, I will take a vote on it then. Sarah Gold, yes. David Harris?
Yes.
Megan Taylor?
Yes.
Sarah Fox?
Yes.
Emily Barron?
Yes.
All right, thanks guys. Passes 5-0. All right, we're close. Megan, you had asked, and we had all agreed, that the Park and Recreation Memorandum of Understanding came back up tonight. I don't know that we necessarily need to do anything with it. I think in the way that I saw this conversation, and quite frankly, I think Park and Rec is still discussing it a little bit. We had made a deal, or I don't know, like in our discussion, we had said with Park and Rec that both of us would be behooved, both entities would be behooved to come back during budget season, relook at the MOU, make sure that what is in it is sustainable for each of the organizations. And if it's not, what else needs to be done, and where are the sharing pieces, what pieces of equipment is there personnel that's needed. So I think that is really just more what this is about tonight, and kind of officially sort of bringing this back up to the level of consciousness within all of our budget talks, in kind of, you know, similarly as we're in talks with the electric company at this point, that we would be in talks with Park and Rec.
Have we had feedback from them?
I don't think so. I mean, I know when it all was coming to when the stuff was being written, there was definitely interest in it.
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah, just now that it's in place, I guess that was the only.
Yeah. And I think we saw some stuff reflected from Todd the other night of areas that the schools would like to see improvement, and where we'd like to take things on. But again, you know, there was some sharing of stuff for turf maintenance and everything, that I think we bought a piece of equipment and Park and Rec is using it to maintain our turf. So there's, we're already doing this. It's just, how much further do we need to go with it? So officially noted. Any subcommittee and liaison updates? Emily?
I just have two quick ones from METCO. Deandra Williams, our METCO director, has brought back and kind of upgraded a program we used to do called the Family Partner Program. It was in John's weekly update in November, but I'm promoting it now again. So it's a way to help some of our students from Boston when they have activities after school. It's so a place for them to stay. You can be like their medical emergency contact. So you get called to go be with them until their parent can get here. And I think there's one other role you can play. So I just wanted to get that out there so everyone knows that we're doing that again, which is so awesome that she was able to bring it back and kind of add to the program that we used to have. And then also in the weekly update from METCO, they're doing their live theater program again. And there's some amazing acts productions that are happening, and you can get reduced tickets. Alvin Ailey is coming in April, and a bunch of theater and musicals and other dance performances. So that's also happening this spring. So I think we can buy tickets as a district if that's something people are interested in, or you can buy discounted tickets to go with your family. So that was really exciting to see that that's back also.
I've been to some of those productions in the past, and they really are amazing.
Yeah, so that was
worthwhile
exciting
for sure.
Yeah.
I never made it to a live one, but I did do a film viewing through one of them, and it was really interesting.
Yeah, I did one last year too, online or through Zoom. So yeah, those are just the two things that I have.
Great, thank you. Policy has not met. We need to, and we'll do so probably in the new year. Meg?
I have a CPAC update. Dr. Paula Donnelly is doing monthly listening sessions now for anyone in the community, really. So she hosted the first one with the CPAC this past Wednesday. So there'll be the third Wednesday. Is this the third Wednesday already? Well, they're going to be the third Wednesday of the month at lunchtime. So there'll be all the Zoom link and details are available out on the CPAC website and the CPAC Facebook page. And perhaps we can, if Paul isn't doing it already, add it up to the student services page too on the website. So definitely a good resource for anyone who might be new to the process or, have a child with, going through student services, or just to touch base and ask questions, because she's a great resource, as is the CPAC.
All right, I think that's it.
Oh wait,
David?
no,
sorry, Sarah.
I have more facilities updates. There's been a lot going on. There was a meeting today that Dr. Bucky was there. Megan popped in for a few minutes. Sustainable Marblehead had invited me to join. Dr. Jessica Benedetto, I believe, had set it up with Highland Busing. It's a fleet management company who manages a fleet of electric buses. And they gave some information on what they can provide as a service, but they actually were really informative too on where we are with technology and how that would fit into the way we use our buses, how we use them pretty much not just morning and afternoon drop off, but for a chunk of the day in between. We use them for field trips and then for sports after. So their fleet, it sounds like, would not necessarily be able to meet the need of how we use our busing fleet, but lots of good information. And they asked if they could come out again in a few weeks and meet more with the district, of no charge to us. But I think, just the information we were able to learn by working with them, it's a great opportunity. Dr. Bucky took them up on it right away. So that information will be forthcoming.
Great. That's great. Can I ask a quick question on that? Is that when you say is that us looking to purchase more buses and electric buses, or?
That's where, in my opinion, it doesn't meet kind of the way we've done business. This is a fleet management company. We have not customarily used a fleet management company for various reasons. This is definitely David's wheelhouse. But my understanding is through managing it in-house, we have some cost savings, because obviously there's a premium you pay for fleet management, just like when you use the sub-service like Kelly, you pay a premium. So by bringing these, one way we are able to reduce costs is by bringing things in-house. However, just through talking to them, their vast knowledge about solar busing was very, very helpful. And if they're willing to come out and give us some more information, I think it's a great way to glean more information, and it's a step closer we get to being sustainable. One other concern I had about using them is one of the highlights, in my opinion, of going to an electric bus system is not just for the sustainability feature for our transportation, but those batteries can be used in the summer and the off times as storage of electricity to then flow back into the grid to offset our usage during peak hours, which is more sustainable, but also it helps regulate our towns. We pay more for peak usage. And if we can use those buses for battery backup, we can reduce our reliance on that peak, most expensive time, and therefore make electricity more affordable for the people in our town. So I think it's a win-win all around. But I think the most usable way to do that is through owning and managing our own fleet. That's a much bigger discussion, but it was super informative. Thank you for Dr. Benedetto for bringing them in, and for Sustainable, and in Highland for coming out. And I can't wait to hear what new information they bring when they come out in a few weeks.
Great, thank you. It's very interesting. David.
So I just want to say that the rumors of our demise have been greatly exaggerated. There is still a building committee. So while the building is up and open, and the building committee has not had a meeting, we will need to meet to approve invoices, which are becoming less and less. The next time we meet in January, we'll be approving, for instance, all of the FF&E invoices that are being finalized and buttoned up. But just wanted to note that we're down to less than, on the punch list, less than 30 items on the punch list that started out at close to 900. Work continues on weekends, work continues after 2:30, and work continues when they can if school is happening. For instance, the pavers that are being installed, they started installing on Monday. We saw them at our meeting Monday and Tuesday, where we had some of the stone dust, and the committee had made a decision. Those came in about $40,000 under what we had allocated for the work to take place, and that should be wrapped up by tomorrow, I think, and it looks great. It's going to be a big improvement. The mural, just a quick update. A lot of people are asking about the mural. The mural is going to, the bottom part of the mural, that work will start in the 1st of January to get that done, and you know, just chipping away at some of the final items.
Fantastic. And I only meant in classification ways only.
No, it was funny. There was a I think at a town meeting, there was some discussion
at the selectmen's meeting. I was at, it said there's no longer a building committee. I raised my hand. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
There is.
Because our change orders, you know, run up through the Board of Selectmen as approval, and so we're almost there. Almost there.
Great. All right. Any new business? All right. There was one piece of correspondence that was put into everyone's Dropbox. It is the final decision from the Attorney General's office for the open meeting complaint that we dealt with last year regarding a get-together that I held at my house. And they find that the committee did not violate the open meeting law. They consider the complaint addressed by this determination to be resolved. So just thought that was quite the chatter. So that one deserved to be noted. And that was it. So that will take us to the end of our meeting, and it is 9:15, and I will adjourn us. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Recording stuff.